fact, the court laid out state laws criminalizing abortion that go back to the 1800s as rationale. The court literally taking America back 150 years. This is a sad day for the country, in my view. But it doesn't mean the fight's over. Let me be very clear and unambiguous. The only way we can secure a woman's right to choose, and the balance that existed, is for Congress to restore the protections of Roe v. Wade as federal law. No executive action from the president can do that. And if Congress, as it appears, lacks the votes to do that now, voters need to make their voices heard.
I want to welcome you to a special edition of Tipping Point today, and I've got a very special guest with me. Let me just say we're going to talk about some of the things that are happening right now in Russia, the Ukraine, Israel, Iran, those types of things. And so this is a special program. But Pastor Mark Biltz, he is someone that I have read and listened to for many years. He discovered the blood moons, and we're going to do a show about the blood moons and eclipses and things like that at a later date. But this is a man very well traveled, very well respected around the world. He is the founder of El Shaddai Ministries in Washington State. He is just extremely proficient in Hebrew, in the Jewish culture. And I'm honored today to have him to join me here on Tipping Point. Bless you, Pastor. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you so much, Pastor Evans. I'm always honored to be on your program.
Well, last time you were with us, there was a buzz on our Tipping Point community because everybody loved your teaching. And I heard a teaching that you did in this program today is based off a teaching you did on the Lord Soon Return. And it's just fantastic. And so let me just kind of give a disclaimer at the beginning here. Now, you're going to talk about the Shemitah cycle. Last time you were with us, you talked about the Shemitah cycle, but it's going to go way past the Shemitah cycle. And you're going to hear about Jubilee and what the significance of this year is. You see all the things happening in the world. This is a very significant year. You're going to hear Pastor Mark talk about that. But let me first of all just start by asking, what is your perspective on what is happening right now on Russia and Ukraine related to Bible prophecy?
Wow. I mean, a lot of people I've been heard talking about, could this be the beginning of a Gog-Magog type of war? But I tell you, Pastor Evans, I think this is huge, what's going on. I have, in our congregation, we have people from so many ethnic groups. I mean, we have Russians and Chinese and South Americans and Hispanics, and we even translate live into Russian. And I talked to our translator, and he said his mom is Russian and his dad is Ukrainian.
Wow.
And, they're brothers and sisters, they say. And so you see a lot of the confusion that's going on in this war is that it really is, brothers against sisters almost. It's horrible.
We have a dear friend who's Russian, and one of the things that she's saying is that her Russian friends in America are being persecuted. One of her friends, her American landlord, would not renew her lease because she's Russian. And I want to say to everyone listening to this, either on YouTube or on endtimes.com, and that is the Russian people are precious people.
Exactly.
You can't blame this on the Russian people. There are protests going on all over Russia right now because of what Putin is doing. He does not represent his people any more than the Iranian mullahs and their government represents the Iranian people. The Iranian people are precious. The Persian people are precious. And so we need to be praying for the Russian people and praying for the Ukrainian people.
Yes.
But this is a very significant time. Iran, Israel, Syria, you have Russia and Iran on the northern border of Israel, the Gog-Magog. It has to be at some point a precursor to the Gog and Magog war.
Well, you have China against Taiwan. You have so many flare-ups that could happen at any moment.
Wars and rumors of wars.
Exactly.
Just like Jesus said. Well, I want to get into your teaching, the Lord Soon Return, and my response when I was listening to your full teaching yesterday was just excitement beyond belief. You don't set dates in this teaching,
right,
but you certainly excited me about the significance of this year. But just start at the beginning and tell us why you believe the Lord is returning soon.
Well, first off, we have to understand the seasons of the Lord. We know in Genesis 1:14 where God said, let there be lights in the heavens, and let them be for number one. The number one reason was signs. And then it said seasons. Well, because the English is so bad, we think that represents winter, spring, summer, or fall. But it typically means, or really means, something when you think of the rainy season or the hurricane season. Everyone knows there's different times of year when there's going to be tornadoes. Well, God wanted us to know the seasons when he will intersect with human history. And so that's what's huge. That word for seasons is moed, and it really means a divine appointment. Is referring to the biblical calendar. You can only have a solar eclipse on a new moon. You can only have a lunar eclipse on a full moon. So when God created the sun and the moon for signs, referring to eclipses, and for seasons, he's referring specifically to the biblical calendar, which is why Passover and the Feast of Tabernacles were both on full moons. This is why Rosh Hashanah is on a new moon. This is why every biblical month begins on a new moon. So God could use that calendar through the eclipses to communicate to Israel when he is going to be intersecting human history in some way.
Wow. Well, so you talk about, how everything is moving toward the Jesus returning and holding us into account. You talked about Zechariah 11, all the nations coming and worshiping before the Lord and things like that.
Right. Well, see, Zechariah 14 in particular, I think everyone is familiar with in verse 6, where it talks about it'll come to pass of all the nations that are left that came against Jerusalem every year have to come up to worship the king. And look at this. It specifically says 3 times on the Feast of Tabernacles. Why on the Feast of Tabernacles was that the appointed time? Well, one of the reasons why in Hebrew, the very same word for full moon is also the same word for throne. So God, can you imagine? God is sitting on his throne. You've got this full moon behind him. And when it is eclipsed, that is huge. But this is why Feast of Tabernacles, a full moon, is when every nation has to come before his throne and worship him.
So even Proverbs now talks about the Lord returning on a full moon. Is that correct?
Yes, and this is what is so unbelievable. Most people don't think of Proverbs as being a prophecy, but Proverbs 7 is one of the most incredible prophetic chapters in the Bible. It says in Proverbs 7:19, and let me preface that with this. In the Gospels, there are parables about Jesus being the good man of the house. There are also parables where he's given talents or money to people, and it says he's gone on a long journey. So we know from the Gospels that Messiah is gone on a long journey, as well that he is the good man of the house. Well, look at Proverbs 7, verse 19 and 20. It talks about this foolish man who's going down by the harlot street. Proverbs 7 is all about the tribulation. You have the harlot of Revelation. You have it being a dark night. And here this foolish man is going the way of her house. And she's trying to seduce him. And Proverbs 7, 19 and 20, even Satan knows the feasts of the Lord. Look at what he says. This harlot says, the good man of the house is not at home. He's gone on a long journey. He's taken a bag of money with him. He's coming back on the day appointed. Well, what's amazing, you go back to look at that in another translation, the Jewish translation. It says in Proverbs 7:20, he's taken the bag of money with him and he's coming home at the full moon. Wow. And so that day appointed refers to the festivals, and it refers specifically to the Feast of Tabernacles, which also refers to the word throw. They're the same Hebrew word.
So we all believe that, I mean, you and I both believe that Jesus fulfilled every spring feast, Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, Pentecost. Those are the 4 spring feasts. There are 3 more feasts coming up. When you talk about tabernacles, when the Lord was talking about celebrating the Feast of Tabernacles, that includes Rosh Hashanah, that includes Atonement, and that includes Tabernacles. Is that correct?
Yes, but here's what's so important. What Christians need to realize is not only did he fulfill those first spring and summer feasts, he fulfilled them to the day.
That's right.
He fulfilled them to the hour. At 9 in the morning is when he was bound to the cross on Passover. And what do we find? It's at that same time, at 9 in the morning, is the time of the morning sacrifice when they're binding the Passover lamb to the altar, they're binding him to the cross. And guess what? At that very same moment, you have 1 million Jews surrounding Jerusalem at 9 in the morning, and they're singing what's called the Hallel, or Psalms 118. So what is Jesus hearing? Millions of people singing at that very moment from Psalm 118, binding the sacrifice with cords, even to the horns of the altar.
Wow.
And they're binding him. God the Father, being the Almighty, said, I'm going to determine what day my son is going to die. I'm even going to determine what hour he's going to die. I'm even going to determine what songs will be sung at his funeral. So he had King David 1,000 years before Messiah came write the funeral hymn that would be sung during his funeral. So he died on Passover at 3 in the afternoon, the time of the evening sacrifice, buried on unleavened bread, rose on first fruits. And then Shavuot, or Pentecost, happened on Shavuot. And if you remember in the book of Acts, Peter said, these guys aren't drunk. It's the 3rd hour of the day. That's 9 in the morning, time of the morning sacrifice. So if we really believe that God is the same yesterday, today, and forever, if he fulfilled the spring feast to the day, to the hour of his first coming, he will fulfill the fall feast to the day and the hour of his second coming. And then along that line, they have to be done in order. You can't have Pentecost happen until he rises from the dead. He can't rise from the dead until he dies, and he can't die, So everything has to happen in order. He's got to die, he's got to be buried, he's got to rise, and then Shavuot. So the Feast of Trumpets is the next feast to be fulfilled, followed by Yom Kippur and then Sukkot. And as you know, do we hear anything about trumpets in the book of Revelation? You bet we do. The Day of Atonement also was all through Revelation. We hear about the Ark of the Covenant is seen. And then, of course, the Feast of Tabernacles, God tabernacles among men for 1,000 years. So we have to understand the prophetic time clock and season, just like there's hurricane season. The 7th month, this coming September, October, is the season for the Messiah's coming.
Well, talk about that. I mean, that's the most exciting thing in the world to me. Talk about the significance of this year. I know this is a Shemitah year, and you proved that very clearly.
It's huge.
And then also Jubilee. Talk about that.
Well, this year, biblically, is the year 5782. Okay? We know it's a Shemitah year because 5782 is divisible by 7. Now, how do we know next year is the Jubilee year? It's basic math. 5782 is also divisible by 49. And so that being the case, this next year is like a trifecta. I mean, this is huge. We have Rosh Hashanah, beginning the first year of a 7-year cycle. Now, I believe all of your listeners are very well educated, and they understand that there's a 7-year tribulation coming. Right. But here's the thing. It cannot be random. God is not random. He is very detailed. He's very organized. And Daniel was Jewish. And the whole reason they went into captivity was because they hadn't been keeping the Shemitah cycle. And so here, this year is the beginning of a new 7-year cycle. I don't believe the tribulation can start any moment, any day. The tribulation, because it is a Shemitah year cycle, has to begin the first year of a 7-year cycle. So that means, and like you said, I'm not setting dates, but what I am saying is this fall definitely begins a new 7-year cycle. So if the tribulation does not begin this year, it can't begin for 7 more years. So we have to understand that. But then the fact that this is the beginning of a new 7-year cycle, according to the season of the Lord, that is huge. And the reason why is because on Yom Kippur, we blow the trumpet of Jubilee mentioned in Leviticus 25. This is a year of Jubilee. And the last Jubilee was 1973 when the Yom Kippur War took place. And that was a signal of a Jubilee year because you only blow the shofar on Yom Kippur in a Jubilee year. And there was the Yom Kippur War. So we're entering a new 7-year cycle. We are entering a year of Jubilee with the trumpet blown on Yom Kippur. And then one of the next most incredible things is on the Feast of Tabernacles, only every 7 years do you have what is known as the Hakel. And so the Hakel is when the king of Israel is the one who had the responsibility to gather everyone together to hear the Torah. This is from Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 10 through 12. Listen to this. Moses commanded them, saying, at the end of every 7 years, in the solemnity of the year of release, in the Feast of Tabernacles, this is when all of Israel has to appear before the Lord in the place that he will choose. And so to me, this is one of the most exciting sermons I think I've ever taught in over 20 years that I've had El Shaddai, that I want people to be aware of the importance of this season, because it is the first year of a Shemitah cycle. This is the season for the tribulation to begin, but it's also the year of Jubilee. It's also the time of the Hakel, when the children of the Lord appear before him. He's the king of Israel, is the only one who had the authority to gather everyone together to hear him read God's laws.
And so you believe that the first year of the Shemitah cycle is the most important year, is that right?
Every year. And then that's 7 times every year is Rosh Hashanah, which is very important. At the end of 7 years, that is huge because that begins a new 7-year cycle. And then on top of that, here we have the Hakel is also read at the end of every 7 years on the Feast of Tabernacles. So all 3 feasts, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Tabernacles, are going to be fulfilled this year and this year only, and it only happens every 50 years. If you believe the Lord's returning in the year of Jubilee, if he doesn't return this year, he can't return for 50 years.
Well, I agree with well, first of all, you have a very detailed, if someone wants to go onto YouTube and see your message, the Lord's soon return, you have a PowerPoint of all of this. Where you really document this is a Jubilee year, this is a Shemitah year, and the Hakel. And so again, we're not setting dates, but look at what's happening in the world right now.
Totally.
I am dumbfounded. Iran has a ballistic missile that they just unveiled last month. It's the first time in the history of them enriching uranium that they have a delivery mechanism that can reach Israel.
Yes.
And according to Israeli intelligence, and you may know more about this than me, they have enough nuclear fuel for 1 bomb. Again, for the first time ever. They've been enriching uranium for many years.
Yes.
But now we're at the same time when the Russia-Ukraine thing is happening, the China-Taiwan thing is happening.
Yes.
Now you have Israel. Israel put $5 billion in their budget this year to bomb Iran. They have been having massive drills to bomb Iran. And now for the first time ever, Iran has the ability, or they're nearing the capacity to be able to nuke Israel, and they will nuke Israel when they get that ability. And so all of these things are coming together right now, and it's a Shemitah year, and it's a Jubilee year, and you have the Hakel and all this. So again, we never set dates, but I'm telling you, one of the things I like about you, Pastor, is that you document everything and you take it back to the Hebrew, because the Bible was not written with a Western mind. It was written with a Hebrew mind. Go ahead.
No, you're exactly right. And that's the reason why we have to understand in Leviticus 23, when it talks about the feasts of the Lord, well, when we hear feast, we think food.
Yeah.
But it's the same Hebrew word that was translated as seasons, which we think of fall in Genesis. So this is why you have to understand the culture to understand the biblical calendar. And we have a biblical calendar that we put out every year. The next one's coming out in a couple of weeks, but we overlap our current calendar with the biblical calendar so everyone can see exactly where we're at concerning the seasons or the times of the Lord. That reminds me in the Ecclesiastes, I think it's 3 verse 1, basically there's a time and a season for every purpose under heaven. God created you on purpose, and everyone needs to realize they were created on purpose, and God always, in one sense, saves the best for last. In a track meet, they always have the fastest runner get the baton to try to pick up lost time. Well, everyone that's listening to your program needs to understand how important and how special they are, because God created them any time in history.
Right.
But he created them just a time like this. And I can't help but think of the verse where God says to write the message, make it plain so everyone can understand it. So I just like to make it plain. Like you said, I don't set dates, but I want people to know when the biblical season is for the return of the Lord, just like when is hurricane season or tornado season. And it's the feast of the 7th month, because that's when the fall feast will be fulfilled, because that's when they fall.
So let's talk about Rosh Hashanah. The next
Sure.
feast, it has to be fulfilled in order.
Yes.
And so to the day. And so the Rosh Hashanah happens this September, right?
Yes.
And so what do you think there, and you understand the significance, all of the symbolisms of Rosh Hashanah. Why do you believe that Rosh Hashanah is the rapture? Why do you associate those two?
I associate the Rosh Hashanah with the resurrection of the dead for multiple reasons. One of them is in Daniel, where it talks about those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake. Well, the Hebrew word Rosh Hashanah is biblically known as Yom Teruah.
Right.
And Teruah basically means a shout, like if someone shouts to wake you up. It resembles an alarm. And so Yom Teruah is the day to awaken those who are asleep. It's also a 2-day feast. So no one knows the day or the hour it would begin. Everyone knows when the full moon is, when you start with the new moon, but no one knows for sure when the new moon is. And all of Israel had to celebrate Rosh Hashanah, and so they would light fires quickly all during the night to reach clear over to Babylon, so that people would know that it was Rosh Hashanah. That's the one feast that was always known as the feast. No one knew the day or the hour it would begin. Now, in the New Testament, when it talks about the last trump, historically, they blow on Rosh Hashanah 100 blasts of the shofar. There's 3 different types of blasts that they blow, and the last blast is known, or the 100th blast is known as the last trump. So when Paul talks about the last trump, he's specifically referring to the 100th blast of the shofar on the Feast of Trumpets. It's also known as the day of the coronation of the king. I believe Psalm 47 is the coronation of the king's psalm that is sung. But everything is set up on Rosh Hashanah for the resurrection of the dead to take place. If you go to our Feast of the Lord, we have, I had a whole series on the Feast of the Lord. It was, and then we
I want to thank you for your unconditional love for me. You are the most beautiful thing I have ever had in my life. You are the reason, that's why I am living in this world. I want to thank you for your unconditional love for me. You are the most beautiful thing I have ever had in my life. You are the admire the way you love me. I wanna thank you for your unconditional love for me. You are the most beautiful thing I have ever had in my life. You are the reason, that's why I am living in this world. I admire the way you are always there for me. I admire the ways you always take care of me. I admire the way you give your all just to see a loving smile on my face. I admire the way you love me. I admire the way you are always there for me. I admire the ways you always take care of me. I admire the way you give your all just to see a loving smile on my face. I admire the way you love me.
Moved it to God's Daytimer, and that's been out of print now. So we recreated that God's Daytimer reprint with a workbook so people can do studies. But I go through explaining how every feast has to be fulfilled to the day and why the resurrection of the dead takes place on the Feast of Trumpets.
So it's some year, and you and I both are saying to people watching and listening to this right now, pay attention to next September.
This coming September is huge.
It's huge. And so no predictions, but
No
it's huge.
predictions.
But when you look at, God does things on purpose and he does things on time. And so what you're saying, it's a Shemitah year, it's a Jubilee year. You have
In the Hakel.
The Hakel. All of those things are massive, pointing to this year, plus the things that are happening in the world. If there's ever been a time to get ready, this is the time. And
Exactly.
I would rather be ready and he not come than not be ready and he come.
And the thing is this, in the Gospels, it talks a parable about how he delayed his coming. And so for some reason, even though this is the major season, he may choose to delay it.
Sure.
But the key is every Rosh Hashanah, we have to be watching, more specifically at the beginning of a Shemitah cycle. Now, when people talk about not knowing the day of the hour, my question is, are you talking about we don't know the day of the hour of the rapture, or we don't know the day of the hour when the tribulation begins, or we don't know the day of the hour when the Antichrist is revealed, or we don't know the day and the hour of the two witnesses? So which one does that apply to? I don't think it applies to everything. We're supposed to be done with our head in the sand like an ostrich.
Right.
I really believe beyond a shadow of a doubt, the tribulation has to begin on Rosh Hashanah some year. So if it does, I'm not talking about the resurrection of the dead being this year, it could happen. But I really believe there's a good chance the tribulation could begin this year. If it doesn't, it might be, 7 years from now.
Right. So talk about, for just a minute, Atonement, the Feast of Atonement. 10 days after Rosh Hashanah, you have the Feast of Atonement. When do you think that is going to be fulfilled?
Well, that's such a good point. I'm so glad you asked that, because even when you think of the Feast of Trumpets, the problem with our Western culture, we see prophecy as a checklist. It's fulfilled, it won't happen again. That's not true biblically. Hebraically, if it's happened before, it will definitely happen again, but in another way. For example, we have 7 trumpets in the book of Revelation. Maybe each trumpet is blown each year on Rosh Hashanah is the next trumpet blown. And so I believe the tribulation has to begin because that's to be done in order. Yom Kippur is specifically for the nation of Israel. It's not for the nations. It's for Israel. It was their day of atonement because as priests, they were to atone for themselves first. The Feast of Tabernacles is known as the Feast of Nations, when they would kill 70 bulls for the 70 nations mentioned in Genesis. Many of the sages said if the nations would have only known what they were doing, I mean, the devil was pretty smart, telling the nations to destroy the very place God was using to make atonement for them.
Wow.
But they said the sages say it would have been smarter if the nations would have put their armies around the temple to protect it.
You have changed my life with your words and motivation. You helped me to become a better person. I feel so great about your love. Never felt that before. You have changed my life with your words and motivation. You helped me to become a better person. I feel so great about your love. Never felt that before. You are not only good by heart, but you also have a good soul. I'm lucky to find someone as wonderful as you are. I am so thankful to you for coming in my life and making it so nice. You have changed my life with your words and motivation. You helped me to become a better person. I feel so great about your love. Never felt that before. You have changed my life with your words and motivation. You helped me to become a better person. I feel so great about your love. Never felt that before. You are not only good by heart, but you also have a good soul. I'm lucky to find someone as wonderful as you are. I am so thankful to you for coming in my life and making it so nice. You are not only good by heart, but you also have a good soul. I'm lucky to find someone as wonderful as you are. I am so thankful to you for coming in my life and making it so nice.
So I believe the Day of Atonement is the next thing to be fulfilled after Rosh Hashanah, which is when Israel will realize that Jesus is the Messiah, their Messiah in particular.
Right.
And I think it's fascinating in the book of Revelations, you see everyone on white horses wearing white coming back. That is specifically a Yom Kippur event. Every year on Yom Kippur, every Jew in every synagogue always comes in white, and it represents the righteousness of the saints. So when you understand the culture and then you read Revelation, you know we will be coming back on the white horses specifically on Yom Kippur.
Wow.
And then we hear the Feast of Tabernacles. That is huge. This is when God sets up his kingdom. He sets up his throne because it's the Feast of Nations. And all nations have to come and worship him on the throne at the full moon, which is the same Hebrew word. and he tabernacles among men for 1,000 years. So simply, the tribulation begins. The next feast is Israel realizes Jesus, Yeshua is the Messiah, and then he returns, feet landing on the Mount of Olives, and he tabernacles among men for 1,000 years. So it's pretty plain.
Well, I think it's fascinating. So you've got the book, and you're going to join me on another program. You have the book Blood Moons. You are the
Yes.
one now that discovered the blood moons, the tetrad of blood moons that we've seen
Yes.
miraculously when Joel talks about the moon turning to blood, the sun not giving its light.
Yes.
Now there are some eclipses that are coming up that you're going to join me in a future program, and we're going to talk about the significance of these eclipses, because as you have pointed out in your book Blood Moons, God communicates to us through the sun, moon, and stars.
That's when he communicates the appointed times. That's why he had the appointed times based when you would have eclipses.
So you've got some significant eclipses that are coming up that we're going to be talking about. Do these eclipses, by the way, line up with what you're saying about Shemitah and Jubilee and those things, Hakel?
Yeah, what's amazing is this. Do you remember the big solar eclipse that went from the northwest all the
Yes.
way down through Florida?
Yes.
That was in 2017.
Right.
Exactly 7 years later, putting it right at the middle of this next Shemitah cycle in 2024. Did I talk about the other eclipse coming in 2024 in the last program?
I don't think so.
Oh my gosh, you've got to, this is incredible. The other one goes from the south to the northeast. For like almost the first time in history, do these eclipses intersect at a very significant place, Pastor Jimmy. This eclipse intersects in southern Illinois, okay? And guess what? The area of southern Illinois is called Little Egypt.
Oh, gosh.
And the cities around it, they have cities around it called Cairo, Thebes, Karnak. Their Southeastern Illinois College has a pyramid and the falcon god is their mascot.
Oh, God.
And this eclipse takes place on Nisan 1, the very day that the
I use myself in a strand that I be losing all of time. This is when I feel alive. And I'm magically in your life. The victim star. You won't dance with me, smile. That's light up the sky. Be this contained just begins tonight. Let's land on your sky. The meaning's been too long. It can't be long enough to get light. so many feeling. Let's try to roll the dice with fine angels. We can deny. Electric chemistry make me feel alive. Dance with me tonight. Let's try to different sky. The beat is integrated. We take you tonight. Let's get lost in this and let it ride. I need some space. The night's different, and we'll never forget the best boy now. I don't want. We keep coming back. We know the words can last. The road to Mars. Yes, I am sending me there. You spend me there.
3 days of darkness began, which is a new moon in Egypt.
Oh gosh, that's
It is
incredible.
the same day the glory fell in Exodus 41. It's on Nisan 1. It's the same day God told Moses, this is the beginning of the months for you. This eclipse in 2024, which begins the series I'm talking about, is incredible. Where it happens, when it happens, and it forms an intersection across the United States like a X or a T, which represents the letter Tav. In Hebrew, it means sign.
Oh wow.
Oh no! If I haven't shared that, that's got to be one of the programs.
Well, you're going to come back and share with us very soon. Well, I want to thank you again for being with me, because this information today is so exciting. You know, with all the things, I think when Jesus said, when you see these things begin to happen, look up, because when you see these things happening in the world today, it can be overwhelming. And this information makes you want to look up and shout and get ready for Jesus to come. And it's going to happen just like the Lord said through the feast. Pastor Mark Bills, God bless you. Thank you so much. Look forward to you being here next time. God bless you.
All righty. Bless you.
All of our Tipping Point audience, thank you guys for being with us today. He will be back with us soon. In the meantime, God bless you. I'll see you next time.